Good evening and welcome to Colorful Conversations, where we're going to talk about early childhood learning and teaching and all the things that go on with early childhood. I am Marty Hoofer, the digital content manager for Keep Indiana Learning, and I'm excited to kick off another semester of early childhood focused presentations here on Wednesday nights. You'll find them at Keep Indiana Learning. And both Kristin and Angielena will be doing these presentations on Wednesday evenings for the next, I don't know, I haven't counted, through early March. There's what I know, is through early March. So Kristin and Angielena, we are happy to have you tonight. Angielena, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Angielena Williams. I am a senior project manager of early care and learning for the Office of Early Childhood and Out of School Learning for the state of Indiana. And so I've been in the field for over 25 years and really love what I do, anything ECE. And so I'll turn it over to Kristin.
Well, hi there, everyone. My name is Kristin Parisi, and I work for Clark Pleasant Community School Corporation, and I am the director of the Clark Pleasant Early Learning Center, and I'm somewhat new to early childhood. I started this job 2 years ago, but this is my 28th or something year as an educator working in elementary and early childhood.
Awesome. We are in good hands. So lots of experience from both of you. I know, Kristin, even though you're new to early childhood, you're not new to education. And Angielena, your experience is vast and wide, looking at early childhood from lots of different angles, both in the field and training future practitioners and now working at the state level. So lots of experience here at the table, which is fantastic. So we have some questions tonight that we're going to talk through. I'll be honest, my early childhood experience is very limited. Both of my children went to preschools. And so there's kind of my early childhood experience, very limited. If you want to talk about seventh graders, I can talk about them. There may not be much difference between 3-year-olds and seventh graders. I don't know. But Angielena, I'm going to throw this first question to you. What is the difference between misbehavior, which I think I understand, and mistaken behavior?
So I really, really, truly love this question. I had an opportunity to teach about this in one of my classes. And so really want to just talk about misbehavior. So there are a lot of negative connotations that go along with misbehavior, right? You know, you start to think about bad and the child is bad and they're challenging, and it makes it sound as though the behavior is intentional. So when you change your mindset, you change it from misbehavior to mistaken behavior, giving the child that human element of the benefit of the doubt, that maybe they didn't do what they were doing intentionally. Maybe it was because there was a need that they have that has not been met. And so that is the best way that I can explain the difference between that. Kristin, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
You know what, when you were talking, the first thing that jumped to my mind is the work by Ross Greene and how kids will behave if they can. And if you think about misbehavior in the sense of not being so intentional, but yet there's some skill that is lagging, something that a child is just missing that then led to that behavior. And I sometimes I do think there are choices and intentionality, but I no longer come to the table when I am talking with children about behavior. I no longer come to the table thinking you intentionally did something wrong. Instead, I've turned my mindset to, what skill do I need to teach you so that you can make a better choice next time?
You know, and I really like that you shared that, because one of the things that that we talk about in our course, in our college course, is that you really have to change that mindset as well of I'm being patient, because patience runs out. You really need to take a stance of understanding versus patience, and it makes that difference.
Yeah.
Okay, I had no idea that when I asked that question, your answers would be almost mindset related. That if we think
Mhm.
about behaviors through that growth mindset, which changes our perspective of everything,
Right.
I don't know. I was not expecting that answer to go that way. So thank you. I'm glad we talked about that.
I love when we blow Marty's mind.
Yes.
Okay. So along those lines, then, how does strengthening relationships in the classroom work with changing some of those unwanted behaviors? How does relationship factor into that?
Sure. So, thinking about the different places that all of the children are coming from, right? We don't know exactly what's going on in their home environment. So, there may be needs that are not being met. There may be toxic stress that's going on that are causing them to behave the way that they are, where they are really more reactive in their getting into some of that brain science, into their amygdala versus their executive function. And when they come to us, we are to build those strong adult child relationships with them. And it helps when they have someone that is caring, someone who is understanding and patient, someone who is going to guide them versus discipline them, because a lot of times we really want to look in a mindset of talking about guidance versus discipline. And we talk about discipline a lot, especially like in early childhood. What is your discipline policy? But maybe we should rethink that and talk about what is your guidance policy. We really want to guide the children and teach them how to best handle situations, even if they're situations of conflict. And that's what we're there to do. And they watch us. And so being good models as well is part of that relationship, showing them how we handle adversity and how we handle situations that may not be opportune at any particular time. And so just building on those relationships and having a strong relationship can help better some of the things that they may have going on that we may not be privy to.
Right, right. And I think relationships, like, that's the foundation of it all. I am thinking about my own conversation with one of my own child, who is an adult teacher in a inner city school, not in Indiana. And when we were having conversations about the behaviors and things that he has seen, I said to him, put your curriculum back on the shelf, put your textbooks away, and spend time just building relationships. Make sure that your students know that you care for them, because until you show them that you care, they will continue to check and check and check to see if you do. And I remember too, just several years ago, working with a colleague of mine, one of my principals, and he had all kinds of snacks in his office. And so kids would come down to the office and he'd sit with them and they'd be eating a snack. And I'm thinking, they got in trouble. Like, they need to be in our timeout room and they need to be, thinking about their behavior. And instead, they're eating a snack with you. And then I watched what was happening while they were eating that snack.
Yeah.
And it was like the food started the relationship building. And so they had some crackers and some, little things, granola bars, things like that. But then the conversation that was able to be had then strengthened that relationship. And then those kids wanted so badly to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then it also led to conversation about learning those new behaviors. So after 25 years or 20 years of being in education, my mindset changed completely.
Yeah. Wow. Lots of good stuff there. But so, Kristin, thinking about that administrator, obviously there then still needed to be a conversation with a parent about negative behaviors. How do you start those conversations? Those are still things I'm assuming you're doing as an administrator. So yes, you've tried to build the relationships. Yes, using a guidance policy, which, by the way, loved that phrase, Angielena. we do still have to have those tough conversations. How do you start them? Where do they go?
So I first start the hard conversation by making sure that I've had some great conversations. So, those first couple weeks of school, or any time we enroll a new student, in the early childhood setting, we have open enrollment is happening all the time as we bring in children who maybe are transitioning from first steps. And so I'm constantly working on my relationships with families so that when or if I do have to make that tough phone call, I can, I have this relationship already. And so the first thing that I do is make sure that they can hear the empathy in my voice, because I know what it's like to be a mom that gets a phone call from my child's school that says, your child made a bad choice today. And no one wants to get that phone call. And, a parent only sends the child they love the most to school. Think about that. They send their kids who they love the most to us. And it's heartbreaking for them when they see their child struggling or they hear that their child is struggling. So I just try to be empathetic with them. And I always tell parents, I'm not calling because I think you've done something wrong. As a parent, you are here, we're going to work as a team, and I am going to love your child and continue to work on this with your child so that I'm on your side and I'm a part of your team.
Oh, I love that. So, Angielena, I'm assuming you had those same conversations when you were running a home child care center, although I would assume they were face-to-face more often. Does that bring any kind of different feel or tone to it?
Well, the positive thing about working in the early childhood field is that I'm sure that Kristin probably has that opportunity to see the parents as well because of dropping off and everything. And I will say that especially dealing with different cultures, there are some people who believe that education is way up here. Like, you don't go against the teacher, you don't go against the principal, and so they embed that into their children. So when they do get that phone call, it's really great hearing how Kristin shared, she humanized it. She made it relatable. And I would say, I love the sandwich method. That's something that we were taught when I worked for Healthy Families. You start with the positive. You always start with something positive, going into all of the positive things that the child has done in the course of the day, the things that they did make it through. And then you have that conversation about maybe the difficult part or the part that, may have caused a little upset in the day. And then you talk about at the end how maybe we together can work on a better solution to help this situation either not present itself again or how to better handle the situation. So you come back together as a team. And so I really love everything that Kristin shared, and just humanizing it makes it so much more important to that family.
Can I jump in and follow up too? Something I love to do with children and parents is make a phone call with the child in my office and call about something good. And boy, when that happens, especially when a parent isn't expecting, when they've had those other conversations and those harder ones. And so I always start that conversation with, hi, this is, Kristin Parisi from blah, blah, blah. I have something great to tell you. Like, I say it really fast so that they can exhale, because every single mom or every single dad is like, yeah. And so I say, I'm calling for something good, or there's nothing wrong. And then I put them on speaker so that they can hear, like, everybody is part of this conversation, and what that does to a child in their self-confidence. And they're so excited to go home. And then to hear a mom who says, I've never had someone call and say something nice.
Yeah.
It's the best thing in the world.
Awesome.
Well, and it goes along with what you said earlier, just humanizing it, because who as a human doesn't want to be a part of something that makes you smile and is encouraging? And so, yes, that's really what we should be after with every encounter that we have through the day, is to humanize that person we're talking with, because they're a human just like I'm a human, and they have bad days just like I have bad days. And that has to
Isn't
be
it funny
okay.
that we don't allow children to have bad moments or bad days or be grumpy or, and I struggle when I'm grumpy. I don't know how to, I'm just grumpy and I don't want to talk to anybody. And, but yet, I mean, everybody in my house knows, okay, just give mom some space.
Yes.
But yet when it's a child, I'm in their face saying, what's wrong? Why are you crabby? Why are you talking like that?
Yes. I caught myself as a parent doing that. And I realized, wait a minute, my 7-year-old has a right to have a bad day.
Yep.
And that has to be okay.
Yep.
And yes, I completely agree. Okay, my next question is not nearly as much fun and soft and fluffy as the last one, but it's an important question to ask. Kristin, I'm going to throw it to you first. What is an FBA? But then I'm going to tag onto a BIP. Because since you and Angielena, feel free to jump in afterwards, kind of from your perspective as well on those things. But what are they? How are they helpful? How do teachers use them? Kind of dig into some of that education lingo of FBAs and BIPs.
Sure. Shouldn't we put some more letters together? Aren't we just famous as teachers for doing that?
Yes.
Right. Poor parents. Can you imagine coming to the table for an IEP meeting for your ACR and then talk about the FBA? So an FBA is that functional behavior analysis. And so we put FBAs together if a child is having a significant behavior in the classroom that is impacting his or her learning and the learning of others. So there are times that we write when we're doing an individualized education plan for a child who receives special education services, and we check on that in that special consideration portion of an IEP, we can say a child, yes, they have significant behaviors. That doesn't mean we automatically have to write an FBA, but we're starting to look to see if we are really handling those behaviors correctly. So we have done a couple of FBAs this school year, and we've used a different process than what I've ever used before, which is really why I was hoping we would get a chance to talk about this today, because we've used a very team approach where we have all gathered around the table, and it's been me as the building administrator, our school psychologist. I am blessed to work in a district that has behavior implementation coaches. So just like you might have a reading coach or a math coach, we have some behavior coaches, along with the resource teacher and then the classroom teacher and the parent. And so we all have talked about the different behaviors that we're seeing. We're talking about, what are we going to do to collect data? Because we can all sit around the table and say, well, I think, but really, if we can get some data on what's happening and what we're seeing, that will help guide the next conversations. And so it's been a fantastic process for us this year because we've taken a very team approach to it. And then for one child, we got to the point where we did not have to put a behavior plan together, which was really exciting. And then for another friend, we have put together a behavior plan. Everyone around that table knows exactly what the plan is. We pulled the child into the plan and said, here's what we want to do with your positive choices here at school, and how can we reinforce those? We use different words and language with him, but then we needed to take time and ask him, what is a reward for you? I might think a reward for him would be having lunch with me. Maybe not. Maybe he just wants to have lunch with the school nurse. But if you don't have that team approach and pull that child into each aspect of this, I think you're really missing out on something.
Yeah. So more letters. This time I'll throw this one to you, Angielena. What does ABC stand for as it relates to identifying a cause for behaviors?
Yeah, so it really ties greatly in with what Kristin was sharing. It's one of those observation tools that you can use. And so the A stands for the antecedent. And so that's what happened before the behavior. Like what could have been a potential cause for what took place, that may have been unwanted, or that may have been a situation that caused some disruption in the classroom. And then the B stands for behavior. So what was the exact behavior? What exactly happened? And then the C stands for consequence. So what happened after? How was the behavior, or how was the situation handled? Because sometimes and I'm sure Kristin can attest to this, sometimes when we're going through our observations, we find that maybe it's not all the child, that it could be the way that the classroom is set up. It could be the way that the adults are responding to the behavior, or the adults are responding to the child. And so that's why it's very important to look at all three. And one of the advantages to that is that it gives you multiple, you want to do this a few times, you don't want to just take one and say, okay, this is the reason why this child is behaving this way, and make that be the end all, do all, end all. And so one of the disadvantages is that you have to be patient, because it's a process. You may need multiple observations using the ABCs to be able to tell, maybe there's a pattern. Maybe there's a certain time of the day that this happens. Maybe every day when auntie drops off, this is when the behavior is happening. Maybe, you notice that there's a difference when mom drops off, or when grandma drops off, but every time auntie drops off, this is when the behavior happens. And so it's really important to use that as an observation tool, the ABCs. And so more alphabet just to put out there.
And that's a piece that we have embedded in that FBA process. And so I like when you said, Angielena, that sometimes as adults, we inadvertently kind of reinforce that behavior. And, we didn't even realize that we're doing that. So we always ask, is there, a learner-centered problem, or a problem of practice? And that problem of practice ends up really allowing us to kind of look at ourselves in the mirror in a very non-threatening way, but to say, what is it that I might have been able to do differently? And I tend to look and I try to be the first one that says, I should have done it like this, or I wonder if, because I feel like if I can show my staff that it's okay to say, I don't think I did this right. Then it opens it up for, they feel comfortable to say it too.
Yeah, more self-reflection. It encourages that self-reflection. So yes, ma'am.
Right. And this is hard, working with children who are struggling with behaviors. It is mentally hard. It is at times can be very physically difficult. I've come home with some bruises on my body, and my husband's like, dude, you work with 4-year-olds.
Right.
Like, yeah, but when they get going, they get going.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I'm always like, you come and see if you can do it, buddy.
So, Angielena, I love the A in that ABC, because that antecedent, as I reflect back on both my time as a parent of younger kids and then in the 7th grade classroom, I think that part, I started looking at the behavior, but really it's that antecedent, that what happens before is probably more telling than the behavior, because the behavior is just an effect of the before. So, wow. Okay, Kristin, there you go. Another mind blown moment. There you go. There you go.
Well, we love to share with you, Marty. So,
well, hey, if I'm learning, I know others are learning. And so that's what this is all about, since we're Keep Indiana Learning. So there we go. Okay, so this question, actually, both of you are going to have probably slightly different views of this, just because different experiences. Thinking about the layout of a classroom and how that can impact behaviors. Can you talk about how a teacher might set up a classroom to facilitate a more peaceful learning environment, a more welcoming learning environment? So thinking about how does the physical space impact the students in their doing the learning? Kristin, go for it.
So the words that come to my mind are child-centered versus teacher-centered. And so it's very clear to me when I walk into a classroom that is child-centered versus a classroom that is more set up for the teacher space. So, I love walking into a room that feels homey. And I don't mean like lamps and plants and rugs. I think that was a big thing a long time ago, but I do think color is important. Soft colors are warm, things that are warm and inviting versus, we had to kind of get rid of some of those really bright reds and yellows. And, like you walk in and it's all that primary colors, which, is so cute, but it's sometimes visually overstimulating. And so we talk a lot at my school right now about just how can you soften your environment? How can you set it up so children can maneuver around the room appropriately? If they're constantly tripping and falling into furniture, sometimes that's not the child's fault. Sometimes it's just there's way too much stuff in the room. And then the something that's just always made me laugh is when we hang stuff all over a classroom. We've got things coming from the ceiling. We've got every space on the wall is covered with some kind of chart or some poster or something. And then we ask children, eyes on me. Well, you got all this stuff blowing around. I can't look at you. I mean, again, it's one of those things where we're expecting a child to do something that I don't think I could do if I was sitting in a classroom like that. Now, I understand I am I may be a little bit more type A. My philosophy is everything has a place and we should find its place and get it there. And so I know that there has to be some teacher autonomy to that. I know there are teachers who are amazing teachers and they can have a little bit less of a structured setup. But I think you have to figure out what the needs of the children in your classroom are, and you have to be responsive to those needs. So sometime you may have one year you might have a group of children who's okay with that, and others, you may have a group that need just a little bit different structure. And so that's when I go back to: is your classroom set up for children? Or is your classroom set up because your name's on the door?
Yeah. So, Angielena, what are your thoughts on that about how the physical space impacts those behaviors?
I mean, everything that Kristin said, I completely agree with. It's really nice to walk into a room and it feels warm. It feels like the children have some autonomy. That there's child-sized furniture, that there are labels on the shelf so that children can be autonomous and get things for themselves and then know where to put them back.
Yeah.
I also like, you don't want a lot of clutter in a room, but you also want to make sure how you position your furniture to not have a lot of open space as well, because sometimes it'll cause the opposite, where you'll have a lot of run around where children just run and run and run and do. And, sometimes you have to think, maybe I need to put something there, and structure that a little differently. But I love to see pictures of the children and their families in picture frames, placed around the classroom so that every child and their family is represented. Making sure that children feel that children feel represented in the books, in the library area, that there are books that are available that represent the children that are in that classroom. And going along with what Kristin was saying, this school year, you may not have a lot of diversity in your classroom, but does that mean that you don't have to have diversity in the materials? And so just thinking about those types of things, and then making sure that when you do have a lot of diversity in your classroom, that those children and their families are being represented. And so that's what I'd like to add to that.
And I love all those things. Thinking about, really, it's about student-centered in your curriculum choices, in your library choices. It's in the furniture placement. It really should be student-centered, not teacher-centered.
You know, Angela mentioned, or Angelina, excuse me, mentioned having things labeled. And so we also, we've taken the labels and we've translated those into several different languages. We have a lot of families in our district that speak Burmese and Chin and Punjabi, Spanish and English. So we have those represented in just the labels in our stations, in our centers. And that was not hard to do. I mean, you know, I understand that Google Translate isn't the best thing in the world, but the children see their letters, and that is important to them. And then when the families come in, go back to our beginning conversation about relationships, their families are like, oh, you've thought about my child.
Right.
And think about that, you know, for me as a mom, you've got me hook, line, and sinker when I think you've thought about my child.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And even thinking about the books, Angelina, you mentioned maybe your class this year isn't as diverse as it's been in past years. One, that doesn't mean you don't include multiple cultures, but it's more than just skin tone. It needs to be entire culture. That I should still have some books about folks who are Burmese. That needs to be a part. It's the whole culture, not just a skin tone. So, I had no idea that's where that answer was going to go. But ladies, that was so rich and so beautiful. I think we'll wrap up here with this last question. If there was one tool, and I'm saying tool in quotation marks, so kind of take this however you want to unpack it, that you would suggest to a teacher, one thing that you think would be the biggest bang for their buck. You know, what has a big impact? And I'm going to take something off the table. You can't talk about relationships because you've already talked about that. So that one's off the table. We've already established that relationships are the key to everything, and humanizing our students, humanizing our parents. But so what's a tool that you think you're like, oh, if we XYZ, this would make a huge difference? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure who I was going to ask first, but since Kristin is all but doing the pick me. Okay. Apparently you
all right.
That question.
So I might be kind of counterintuitive. No, that's not the right word. Going against what I said, but here's what I think. I think as teachers, we have to take care of ourselves. Because we have all heard you cannot pour from an empty cup. And we know that. So I could tell you to do 1,000 different things. But if you are mentally and physically depleted, you can't love anyone else. And really, I think it is about, I mean, I understand that you can't love a child smart, but until you love them, you can't get them to be smart. And I just think we have to, you know, we are at a really hard time in our career. And so I cannot in good conscience sit here and tell anyone that I think you've got to do anything before you take care of yourself. So that's mine.
That's a good answer, my friend.
See why I wanted to go first? I would forget it. I just thought I would forget it.
So, Angelina, good luck following that. I am not envious of you. So, what's your answer?
So mine is self and team reflection daily. I would encourage, if I had a teaching team, I would encourage them that one, you always need to self-reflect. For one, you need to think about your own biases, and sometimes you have to do that daily. Like, you have to remember that child, since we were talking about behaviors, that child that did XYZ yesterday is a child that is going to come in at 100% today. And you give them that 100% because they deserve that 100%. So you have to self-reflect. And then you should team reflect, because sometimes you may, especially depending on the team dynamic, you activities that you may plan, the classroom environment, those types of things may not be working well that day, and maybe you can't see them. So it's best if you talk with your teaching teammate and see what they think too, and then help them to learn that process of self-reflection. And then it's just reflection going on daily. So that's what I would encourage. That's the tool, is self and team reflection.
Ooh,
Oh.
she nailed it.
Oh, wow. I thought when I took relationships off the table, I thought, oh, you're stumping them a little bit. Then I struggle with this question. Mic drop. You guys blew that out of the water.
High five,
We should high five. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Wow. Yes, to all of those things, because we have to take care of ourselves, because it is impossible to take care of others. The whole airplane thing, you got to put on your oxygen mask first. Totally agree with that. But yeah, Angielena, that daily reflection is so powerful. When I was in the classroom, I noticed, I don't remember how many years into my career, but I noticed a crabby attitude was sneaking into every day. And I didn't like going home that way. And I wanted to control the story that was told out of my classroom. So I challenged myself to every day tweet from my school account using the hashtag share the positive, which meant I had to find a positive thing that happened every single day. And that completely changed the way I thought about it, because some days it just appeared real easy. I'm like, oh, there's your share the positive for today. But then sometimes I would be driving home like, what are you going to share? What is the positive? And it was always there. I just had to look sometimes a little deeper. And so that reflection, and I like what you said about doing it with your teammates, because I know so often in early childhood classrooms, you're not in there by yourself. There is another person that you could reflect with, and then there's so much growth that comes out of reflection that allows tomorrow to be a better day because of the learning opportunities we had today. So,
wow, that's a powerful sentence.
Oh,
But
maybe
really,
I'll need to go back and listen to it again.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's tomorrow we can be better because of what we learned today. And that only happens if we take that time to reflect, like Angielena said. So, ladies, wow. Thank you. I want to talk about the events you have coming up, but either of you have some parting thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
No, I just shared that with everyone that may be paying attention or tuned in tonight. Please join Kristin's sessions. She's amazing. Please come to mine as well. But
I was going to say, if folks, you got to go listen to Angielena. She is amazingly wonderful.
Let's just share the wealth and do the best that we can for early childhood education and for the profession itself. So.
Yes, I completely agree. So let's talk about those upcoming events. Next Wednesday, 6:30. That event, none of these upcoming events are here on our YouTube channel immediately. They will be after the fact. Here we're coming to you live. These 4 events that we have coming up, you do need to register for, and you can do that at keepindianalearning.org. So you register and then you'll join via Zoom, which makes it super easy then to either ask questions in the chat or unmute your mic and talk to Kristin and Angielena. So that's the platform we use, is Zoom, for these next 4 events. But if you can't catch them live, they will be on our YouTube channel a day or two after the event. And all of our events are on Wednesday nights at 6:30, just like this one was. Next week, Angielena is going to talk about student leadership in early childhood classrooms and talk about a way to change behaviors. When, we talk about modeling things for students. Well, what about having students model for each other and what that leadership can look like? And super excited for that session. Then on February 1st, which is just 2 weeks away, crazy, February 1st, unlocking communication needs in a preschool classroom is something Kristin's going to talk about. So all goes back to that relationship building. It's all what it's about. Angielena then 2 weeks after that on the 15th dives into supporting behaviors in multi-age classrooms, which is not uncommon in an early childhood setting. And then finally, Kristin wraps up this semester of learning with early childhood accreditation. So even if you're like, well, I'm just, and I hate that word, just a classroom teacher, I don't need to know about accreditation. I would argue that is not the case. You do need to understand the process because you are a part of the process. And the more you understand it, the better the process flows and you understand your role in it. So ladies, I am super excited about these 4 upcoming events you have. So thank you for your time tonight. And we will see you next Wednesday, Angielena, on Zoom. And then a couple weeks after that, Kristin. And I'm excited for this semester of learning. So thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, we appreciate you, Marty.
Yep, absolutely. Marty, you are one of the best. What a nice job you do facilitating these.
Oh, thank you. And I just appreciate Keep Indiana Learning giving us a space to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can catch these things on a regular basis. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.